Marcus sat silently, staring at his phone screen, reading the message for the third time. His heart thudded in his chest, a strange mix of disbelief and rising anger building inside him. Hey, Marcus. I know this is weird, but would you be my date to my ex-husband's wedding? I'll pay you $500. I just can't walk in there alone. Please. It was from Sarah Chin, someone he barely knew, a fellow parent at his daughter's elementary school. Their only real interaction had been exchanging numbers during a parent-teacher meeting. Aside from the occasional polite nod in the hall, they hadn't spoken. His initial impulse was to delete the message. He was barely keeping it together as a single dad, still trying to rebuild after losing his wife 2 years earlier. The last thing he needed was to dive into someone else's emotional wreckage. Especially not for money. But then he looked across the room. 8-year-old Emma sat at their modest kitchen table, carefully spooning out her cereal, using only a little milk to make it stretch. They were almost out of groceries again. That $500 could fill the fridge for 2 whole months. Marcus's pride clenched its fists, ready to argue. But desperation whispered louder. Ever since he'd been laid off from his job in construction, bills had piled up and his savings vanished. He couldn't bring himself to ask for help, not from friends, not from family. Emma didn't know how bad things were, and he intended to keep it that way. Fingers hovering above the screen, he typed. What exactly would I need to do? The reply came within seconds. Just be my +1. Look decent. Maybe dance with me once or twice. That's it. I just need to walk in like I've moved on. Marcus closed his eyes. Everything about this felt wrong. Awkward. Risky. But his daughter needed food. And the rent was due in 2 weeks. All right. But I want half the money up front. 3 days later, Marcus stood outside a luxury hotel, tugging nervously at the sleeves of his only suit, the same one he wore to job interviews, and his wife's funeral. Sarah stepped beside him, dressed in an elegant navy gown that probably cost more than he used to make in a month. She looked stunning. But up close, he saw it, the sadness hidden behind her makeup. Thanks for doing this, she said softly, her voice slightly unsteady. I know it's awkward. Marcus gave her a steady nod, searching her expression. Why is this so important to you? She hesitated. Her smile wavered. Then, in a voice full of raw honesty, she said, because he left me for his secretary. Because he told everyone I was the problem. Because he kept all our friends, and I was left with nothing but shame. Her voice cracked. I just want to walk in there, with my head high. Just once. Something about the pain in her voice stirred something in Marcus, something he hadn't felt in a long time. It reminded him of his own heartbreak. His own loss. His own silence. He gently offered his arm. Then let's show them what they gave up. Inside, the wedding was everything he expected, over the top and dripping with wealth. Glistening chandeliers. A 5-course menu. A full live orchestra. Marcus felt like a worn-out pair of shoes in a designer showroom. But beside him, Sarah walked with grace. Her confidence seemed to grow with every step. Then Marcus saw him. David Chin, tall, polished, glowing with the smugness of someone who'd never known struggle. He laughed easily with his new bride, a woman who didn't look much older than a college student. That's him, Sarah whispered. David. As soon as David spotted Sarah, his expression shifted. His joy cooled into something colder. Calculating. He whispered to his wife, who glanced over at Sarah with thinly veiled contempt. He's coming over, Sarah whispered, clutching Marcus's arm tighter. David strode over with his new wife in tow, smiling the kind of smile that cuts without raising its voice. Well, Sarah, he said smoothly, what a surprise. And, Who's this? His eyes flicked over Marcus, dismissive, condescending. This is Marcus, Sarah replied evenly. My boyfriend. David let out a mocking laugh. Boyfriend? Interesting. And what do you do, Marcus? There was no curiosity in his tone, just the polished arrogance of someone used to being the winner. Marcus clenched his jaw. I'm between jobs at the moment, he answered. Oh. David's smirk widened. Well, I'm sure you'll land something eventually. Not everyone can be a successful attorney, right? Marcus felt the heat rise behind his eyes. This man didn't know a thing about what real struggle looked like. He didn't know what it felt like to choose between rent and groceries. To watch your child go without, and still smile like everything was okay. Marcus met David's gaze squarely. Actually, he said calmly, I'm a veteran. 3 tours overseas before I came back to care for my wife while she was sick. After she passed, I worked construction until the company downsized. His voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. But every word landed like stone. So no, I'm not a lawyer cashing in on other people's problems. But I know what it means to serve something greater than myself. David's smirk vanished. His wife shifted awkwardly beside him, suddenly unsure of her place. Sarah turned to Marcus, stunned. He had never shared any of that with her. David cleared his throat. Well, I hope everything works out for the two of you. Marcus didn't answer. Because for the first time in a long while, he didn't need to. As David turned to walk away, he suddenly paused, throwing one final verbal jab over his shoulder. Oh, and Sarah, you look different. Aged, maybe. It was a deliberate strike, meant to sting. Marcus caught the flicker of pain that crossed Sarah's face before she quickly forced a smile back into place. But something deep within Marcus stirred. Enough was enough. You know what, David? Marcus said, his voice rising above the nearby conversations. You're absolutely right. She has changed. The room quieted slightly as heads began to turn. She looks like someone who's finally found her strength. Like a woman who knows her value and doesn't rely on anyone else to validate it. He glanced at Sarah then, and this time, his smile wasn't part of the performance, it was real. She looks stunning. David's smirk faltered. A red flush crept up his neck. Who exactly do you think you are? Marcus didn't flinch. I'm a man who knows class when he sees it, something you clearly wouldn't recognize even if it was handed to you on a silver tray. A quiet ripple spread through the crowd that had started gathering nearby. David's new wife pulled at his sleeve, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Let's go, David, she whispered. But David wasn't ready to retreat. His pride had taken a hit. You have no idea what our marriage was like, he snapped. Sarah was cold. Distant. She never supported me. Stop. The word came out of Marcus's mouth sharper than he intended, silencing David mid-sentence. Don't you dare stand here on the day you vowed to love someone else and trash the woman you once promised to cherish. Whatever happened between you two, you deal with it privately. You don't get to shame her just to feed your ego. Marcus stepped forward, lowering his voice. Yet somehow, his words carried more power in a whisper than David's had in a shout. My wife died of cancer. For 2 years, I watched her fight for every breath. I was by her side when she took her last one. And you had a woman who loved you, who stood by you, and you threw her away for something younger and shinier. That disgusts me. David tried to respond, but Marcus wasn't finished. Sarah deserves better. She deserved better back then, and she deserves better now. Honestly, Marcus added, turning to Sarah, she even deserves better than pretending to be with someone like me just to prove a point to a man who clearly isn't worth it. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, but she held his gaze. Marcus softened. Sarah, would you like to dance? She nodded silently, unable to speak. As they walked away from David and his stunned new bride, the sound of murmurs and whispers followed them, but Marcus didn't care. For the first time in a long time, he felt like himself again. On the dance floor, Sarah finally spoke, her voice soft. You didn't have to defend me like that. Yes, I did, Marcus replied, gently guiding her into a slow spin. No one deserves to be spoken to like that, especially not by someone who once claimed to love them. She hesitated before asking, why did you agree to come tonight? Really? Marcus went quiet. Then finally, he admitted, because I needed the money. I've been out of work, and my daughter and we've been scraping by. I didn't want to beg for help. When you offered to pay me, it felt like I could earn it instead. Sarah stopped dancing. Marcus. I know, he said quickly, his voice low with shame. It's pathetic. I'm a grown man who can't even take care of his own kid. Stop right there, she said, her tone firm. There's nothing pathetic about doing whatever it takes to provide for your child. That makes you a good father. They danced in silence for a moment, wrapped in the hush of understanding. Then Sarah spoke again. Can I confess something too? Marcus glanced down at her, curious. I didn't just want to make David jealous. I've been watching you. At school events. The way you braid Emma's hair, even though it's obvious you're still figuring it out. The way you cheer louder than anyone at her soccer games. The little notes you tuck into her lunch. He blinked, surprised. Sarah smiled softly. I've been divorced for over a year. In that time, I've been on 3 dates. Every one of those men treated me like a walking bank account because of my divorce settlement. Not one asked me about my passions. My fears. My future. But tonight, you stood up for me. Not because you wanted something, but because you believed I mattered. Marcus swallowed hard. Everyone deserves respect. That's all. Exactly, she whispered, eyes shimmering. And you gave me that when you didn't have to. You're a good man, Marcus. Emma's lucky to have you. The music came to an end, but they remained on the floor, unwilling to let go just yet. I have one more confession, Sarah said gently. I didn't actually need to pay you. I have more than enough money from the divorce. I only offered because I figured it was the only way you'd say yes. Marcus's cheeks flushed. So, you knew I was desperate? I knew things were hard, she corrected. And I knew you were too proud to accept help. So I made it sound like you were helping me instead. Marcus looked at her, processing the truth. I want to help, she continued. Not out of pity. Because I admire you. I know people in construction. Let me introduce you. Help you find your footing again. I can't take charity, he muttered automatically. It's not charity, she said softly. It's one friend helping another. She smiled. Besides, I'm hoping you'll take me on a real date sometime. One where we don't have to pretend. Marcus felt something warm crack open in his chest. Something that had been locked away since his wife's death. I'd like that, he said quietly. But full disclosure, I can't afford anything fancy. How about a picnic at the park, she offered. Emma can come too. I'd love to get to know her better. Marcus smiled. She'd love that. She's been asking me when I'll find her a new mom. I keep telling her it's complicated. It is, Sarah agreed. But maybe, not impossible. They left the wedding early, hand in hand. But before they exited, Sarah approached David one last time. Calm. Composed. With grace. She looked him in the eye and thanked him, for the years they shared, and wished him well in his new life. David blinked, caught off guard. For a split second, Marcus saw something flicker in his expression. Regret, perhaps. As they walked toward Marcus's old pickup truck, he asked her gently, "Why did you do that? After everything he said to you?" She paused for a moment, then answered with quiet strength. "Because holding on to bitterness only hurts me. And tonight, I realized something. I don't need his approval anymore," Sarah said, her voice steady as they reached the side of Marcus's truck. "I don't need him to admit he was wrong, or realize what he lost. I just need to be at peace." She glanced upward, her eyes tracing the quiet stars above them. "And for the first time in a long while, I think I'm heading in that direction." Marcus drove her home. But when they reached her driveway, neither of them was ready to say goodnight. So they sat there, talking for hours, long past midnight. They spoke of everything, their pasts, their kids, their fears, and the dreams they were still brave enough to hope for. Marcus opened up about his late wife, and the guilt he still carried for wanting happiness again after such a deep loss. Sarah shared what it felt like to live in a marriage where she felt invisible long before it ended. "I don't want to be someone's backup plan," Sarah said quietly. "I don't want to be with someone just because they couldn't have the person they truly loved." Marcus looked her in the eyes, full of sincerity. "My wife will always be part of my story. That won't change. But she's gone, and I know without a doubt that she would want me to find joy again. She'd want Emma to have someone in her life who loves her like a mother should." He paused, then turned fully to Sarah. "You wouldn't be my second choice. You'd be the person I choose to begin again with. To build something real. Something worth fighting for." Sarah leaned in and kissed him softly, a kiss filled not with urgency, but with hope. "I should go inside," she whispered. "Emma's probably waiting for you." "She's at her grandmother's tonight," Marcus replied with a small smile. "But, you're right. I should get home." As he drove away, he felt something lift inside him, like a weight he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. It wasn't just because he now had a chance at work again. It was deeper than that. He remembered who he was, a man who stood up for people, who fought for what was right, who was learning how to love again. The next morning, Emma came bouncing through the door, full of questions. "How was the fancy party?" she asked with wide eyes. Marcus smiled and told her all about Sarah, how kind she was, how she wanted to meet Emma properly next time. "Is she going to be my new mom?" Emma asked, her tone matter-of-fact in the way only kids can be. "Maybe someday," Marcus said gently. "But first, she's going to be our friend. And you know what friends do?" Emma nodded seriously. "They help each other." "Exactly," Marcus said, smiling. "Like how I helped her last night." 6 months later, Marcus had found his footing again, working full-time, thanks to connections Sarah had offered. Though she resisted, he insisted on returning the $500 she had once promised him, wanting to repay her not just in money, but in pride. Their relationship had unfolded slowly, intentionally. Emma remained at the heart of every decision they made. Sarah became a regular part of their world, joining them for dinner, cheering from the sidelines at soccer games, and helping with homework after school. She never tried to replace Emma's mother. Instead, she quietly carved out a space of her own, building trust, one thoughtful moment at a time. On the anniversary of Marcus's wife's passing, Sarah arrived at their home with flowers and a handmade photo album. She had gathered pictures from friends and family, capturing the life and warmth of the woman who came before her. "She should never be forgotten," Sarah said softly. "She's a part of Emma's life. That means she's a part of mine too." In that moment, Marcus realized, he loved her. A year after the wedding they'd first attended together, David and his second wife divorced. Rumor had it he had been unfaithful again. When Sarah heard, she simply mailed him a card, wishing him peace and encouraging him to find joy within himself. Marcus had asked her, "You're not angry?" "No," she said. "I'm thankful. If he hadn't walked away from me, I never would have found you." 2 years after their first slow dance, Marcus proposed in the park where they had shared their first real date. Emma had helped him choose the ring and even orchestrated the proposal. When Sarah said yes, Emma squealed louder than anyone. At the wedding, Sarah's maid of honor gave a heartfelt toast about rediscovering love and the strength it takes to open your heart again. Marcus's best man spoke about healing after loss and standing by the people you care about. But the speech no one forgot came from Emma. She stood up, a confident 10-year-old with a clear voice and eyes full of love. "My dad taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect," she said. "It's about finding someone who makes you better. Sarah makes my dad better. He makes her better. And they both make me better." She turned to them both. "My first mom would have loved Sarah. Because Sarah loves us just like she did, with her whole heart." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Later, as Marcus and Sarah shared their first dance as husband and wife, she leaned in and whispered, "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if I hadn't sent that message? If I hadn't asked you to be my wedding date?" Marcus spun her gently, looking around at the life they'd built, the family surrounding them, Emma dancing with her grandfather, the warm laughter filling the room. "I think we would have found each other eventually," he said. "Some things are just meant to happen." Sarah smiled, resting her head on his chest. "I love you, Marcus." He kissed her temple. "I love you too. Thank you for seeing me clearly, even when I couldn't see myself." As they swayed to the music, Marcus reflected on the man he had been at David's wedding, angry, lost, barely holding it together. And he thought about Sarah, who had been bruised, lonely, and desperate for validation from someone who never truly valued her. That night, they had both come looking for something. Sarah thought she wanted revenge. Marcus thought he needed money. But what they found was each other. They had discovered love, compassion, partnership, the courage to try again. Sometimes, life gives you its greatest gifts when you least expect them. Sometimes what feels like the end is really the beginning. And sometimes, the person who sees your light when you're buried in darkness, is the one meant to walk beside you for the rest of your days. Marcus held his wife close, grateful for every turn, every trial, every moment that had led them here. Tomorrow, they'd head off on their honeymoon. Emma would stay with her grandparents for the weekend. But tonight? Tonight, they danced. And celebrated the beautiful life they had rebuilt, together. It had been worth the wait. It had been worth the heartbreak. It had been worth everything.